we'll just be pretty casual. Before I introduce you, I want to introduce myself. My name is Heidi Vaughan. I think nearly everyone who's here has been here before. If you've not, would you raise your hand? Welcome. I hope you come back soon. This event today, we're going to have a talk about insuring art. And it is put on by the Houston Art Gallery Association. And if you're watching this video, what you can't see is that the president of the Houston Art Gallery Association, Carla Basong, is the one making the video. She's not in the video, but I'm just going to plug, if you've seen this beautiful logo around town, this was designed for us this year by Chris Hill, who has done some wonderful art logos for a very long time, wonderful logos, and we're so delighted he did this one for us. We actually have our fall event coming up next Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's at the participating galleries, and just so I get it right, the Houston Art Gallery Association is composed of the finest art galleries in Houston, each with their own distinct programming. Our programming, we represent Houston-based artists exclusively. We are all about supporting local. Kat and I are both credentialed fine art appraisers. Appraising art is a huge part of our business. Valuing art is a huge part of our business and an important part of business. That does set us apart from the other galleries. We also represent collectors and collections, and some of our collectors even have their own page on our website. Because if you're really buying art all the time, get a drink first and then come get a seat. Go, Tim. Get a drink. You guys want to get a drink first and then come get a seat. We want you to have a good time. But there are currently 19 galleries in the Houston Art Gallery?
20. 20.
Okay. So, and we're all awesome. So you want to check us all out with that. So now I'd like to introduce Adrienne Reid, who I am delighted to know. Adrienne is my insurance agent. She is the insurance agent for many people in this town. The first time I called her up, I think I got your name from Gus Caprivo, maybe. Yeah. And I was doing something crazy because I'm always doing something crazy. And I was working, it was right after Hurricane Harvey, and I didn't have a gallery yet, although I was an appraiser and a dealer. Secondary market art broker. I had a pop-up show at Robert McLean's warehouse behind Ninfa's on Navigation. Were any of you there?
Yeah,
I know you were there.
You
got some great.
I think about 8 pieces.
You got some great art. So I worked with 7 galleries and then some of my private clients, and we had a huge sale to raise funds for Hurricane Harvey relief. And it was really fun. It was over 2 weekends, and I think maybe the week in the middle. And it was a crazy installation. If you all know Randall Mossman, he's up on a scissor lift, drilling into cinder blocks to hang art. I mean, it was. When I look back on it, it's like, what was I thinking? But it was actually successful, and we did give a nice check, and I think it made people feel good that they were able to do something to help out.
Yeah.
So
and no art was damaged either.
And no one was damaged. So, and I remember I asked you, well, what's the most common insurance claim? And you said art that falls off the wall. And we're going to talk about that. But before we do, I just would like to say ever so quickly, and if you're just coming in, get a drink first. You'll have more fun. Kat will show you where. Okay. So Adrienne Reid is Senior Vice President of Huntington T. Block Insurance Company. Huntington T. Block is the world's largest fine art insurance broker, insuring thousands of galleries, museums, collectors, artists, conservators, art shippers across the United States. For 60 years, they've been the industry leader. They are doing the art fairs, everything. They know what they're doing. At some point, I'll mention the claim I unfortunately had to make this year. It does happen. If you handle as much art as we do, it's going to happen eventually. And certainly we've helped many of our clients, especially after Hurricane Harvey, but lots of other times too. So, and I will just say for anyone who's on Instagram, please follow us. Yeah. Please follow Houston Art Gallery Association, but follow Adrienne because she has a super fun, I hope I don't offend you when I say this, she's an art insurance nerd. Her posts are all about how awesome it is to insure art. We were gonna have a claim one time, do a post one time, we didn't do it. I don't have the convertible anymore, but I had a convertible, and he has a claim that gets filed is when art flies out the bag, which,
That actually happened.
Well,
I won't say where, but it did actually.
But I think
one of our clients.
We were gonna make a video, and I think a painting was gonna fly out the back of my convertible and then hit the ground and burst into flames.
Just have fun with it.
Maybe we'll borrow the car back someday and do that, but.
We need to find a painting to burn.
Yeah, now I have the HVFA Range Rover, and we're able to carry some big art in that vehicle, so much better than the Mini Cooper convertible. So let's just start by saying, how did you get into art insurance?
Yeah, it's a question that people ask me all the time because it's such a niche field to be in, and really, there's only maybe about 20 of me across the United States. And, so it's a very small community of specialized art insurance brokers. And so, yeah, my undergrad was in art history. But really the insurance angle kind of came in from my background of my family, which my father specializes in ocean marine cargo insurance, which is also a very specialized type of insurance. And most of it is done through Lloyd's of London. If any of you have ever heard of Lloyd's of London, it is the place where weird and special things get insured. And so along with, a tanker ship full of ocean marine cargo things that, they insure, they also insure paintings and artworks across the world.
I once insured a painting for 5 million euros with Lloyd's of London when it shipped to Europe.
Yeah. So, I worked for my dad basically from a child, shredding papers and doing things around the office and everything. And while I found it interesting, I wanted to work in the world of art. And so it really was my mom that said, why don't you do art insurance? And I didn't even know that something like that existed. And lo and behold, I opened up Art News magazine and saw an ad for Huntington T Block, that was always, right there and maybe the third page. And said, you know what, this is what I want to do with my life. And here I am 20 years later. So, I started very young and moved up to Washington, D.C., which is where our headquarters is, and worked in the headquarters office for about 4 years, and then decided to move back to Texas because I love Texas, and I am a Texan, to open up our flagship Houston office, which is me. And I've been here for about 15 years. So I work with some of the largest museums across the United States, and a lot of art galleries, a lot of large collectors, art shippers, conservators, really just anybody in the art world. And it's a really fulfilling career because I get to be on what I would say like the periphery of the art market. I'm not in it directly, but I'm supporting it, which is really gratifying, especially, working with museums and exhibitions that are, doing things like, it's super gratifying to be a part of that process.
It is a pleasure to be around beautiful things
Exactly.
all day, and we make house calls. That's a big part of our business, and I must say we spend time in the most beautiful homes in Houston and outside of Houston as well, but it is a real pleasure to be around wonderful things all day. So, but I know you collect a little bit yourself.
Yeah, I do. I mean, and also I have an artist streak in me too. Like, I dabble in things, photography, knitting.
If you follow her on social media, you'll see at the holidays, she does something very special every year that is on theme.
Yes.
With something going on that's could be a gingerbread house-ish.
Yeah. I basically, a long time ago, I would make massive gingerbread houses, and when I started having kids, I ran out of time to do that. So I thought, man, I'm gonna do something a little different, and every year pick a different medium of art and study gingerbread houses in that medium of art. And so every year I've picked a different theme or a different medium, and it's been really fun.
Was last year NFT?
No, that was 2021. I did
the
NFT,
right year for
big
NFTs.
Yeah, last year I did a collage.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Well, NFTs is a conversation for another talk,
Oh, yes.
but I will say, I bought an NFT from Emily Duval. She taught me how to buy cryptocurrency, a digital wallet, and now that I've done it, Kat, will you help her? You can get a drink first. Now that I've done it, I would say, between when I chose the art, bought the crypto, went back to buy the art, I could no longer afford the art. And it wasn't because the art was blasting off, it was because crypto is so unstable.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I'm never gonna do this again.
Right.
But it's a great dinner party story and I can show it to you sometime.
Yes.
So, how is art insurance different from homeowners and car insurance?
Yeah, everybody likes to snooze over and glaze over when you say insurance.
Right.
But art insurance is so different, and that's why it's a lot of fun to talk about, because it's you're insuring something that intrinsically is irreplaceable. It's priceless, right? These are things that, if they get damaged, they're lost forever. And so it's something very special in the insurance world, because you're actually insuring the financial aspect of it, right? So there's the finance part of it. But then you're just also protecting and insuring the intrinsic value of a piece that can't really be quantified in dollars and cents. So we insure a lot of, states and historical societies, state archives that, this is literally documents that just, you wouldn't be able to go buy on the open market, essentially. But it's important to have financial protection so that if there's a catastrophic loss, they could have the resources to do as much as possible for restoration and repair, essentially. But when it comes to like homeowners insurance and art insurance, really the biggest difference is the coverage. Homeowners insurance is broad, but art insurance takes it to the next level. It goes above and beyond, and there are very few exclusions on the policy, so it's just really broad coverage. And then if you have a claim, you're not dealing with like a general property person that does property insurance. You're dealing with an art adjuster who will work with art conservators, art shippers, all the people in that network that you would want to be working on your side. And the valuation, right? And that gets to your point about appraisals and how important they are. Because,
And inventories.
Inventories and record keeping is very important. We'll talk about that for sure. But it's not like you can just go out and buy another one, and the art insurance policy understands that and works with you on that.
At some point, we'll talk about the claim I filed.
Yes.
I hate
It's a good story.
I hate that I broke a $20,000 sculpture in my gallery this year, and it's a bummer. And I feel,
it was a bad day.
I feel the good news is, I'm glad it was me and not Kat and not one of our clients.
Yeah.
Because I think they would have felt ghastly, and I felt ghastly, but.
Yeah.
But the whole thing went so well, and I'm gonna talk about how that played out, but I don't think we're there yet.
No.
Yeah, okay. So, so what are the most type of art claims?
Yeah, common type of art claims. So, a lot of people, when they think about art insurance, they always ask me, they're like, oh, so Thomas Crown Affair, like the movie, I don't know if you've ever watched it, but it's this super elusive, billionaire guy who has this big art heist, at the museum. And, some of that is a part of what I do, of, the Rene Rousseau, right? But most of the time, art insurance claims are actually pretty boring. They are art falling off the wall.
Yeah, you told me that. You told me that, and I will say one of my clients, we had a beautiful Chuck Close original work of art hanging on that wall one day, and the client who had consigned it wanted it back in a hurry, and didn't maybe take the time to get the proper art handling, and just got someone who was available, who brought it back and put it where it had been, and in the middle of the night he heard a loud crash, and it was a total loss. And I said, well, first thing I'm going to tell you is we've got, the listing, where we had it at the gallery at 60,000.
Right.
I have the correspondence with Pace Gallery, because when I come up with a number, I don't just go like, ooh, I'm gonna take that. I mean, I really do research. I talk to real people. I get real numbers. It's super important that you work with an appraiser who's really good, like me, like that. And I said, I've got correspondence from Pace Gallery attesting to its value of 60,000, and luckily everything went great, and he had no trouble. It's a sad tragedy that the work's gone forever, but he had no trouble getting compensated because he also had his own very good record.
Exactly.
So,
but those things happen. I mean, it's strange. You think about the care that it takes to put a painting on the wall, but sometimes the installation method is not good enough. And that's really where it's very important to use art handlers and art preparators, who know, they're experts in their field.
Our favorite way to hang is on D-rings and on screws.
Yes.
It's most stable. Like the wire that you see is something that could break or come loose or whatever. And they won't get tilted if you have it at 2 points. So that's the main way we do it. Do you have a thought on that?
I mean, I'm no expert in art handling. There might be other people in the audience that could, enlighten us on these things, but I'd say that every artwork is so unique and so different. So, it's not like there's one perfect way to do something. Just making sure that you're taking into account not only the artwork itself, but also where it is and what kind of interaction with people it might have, right? Like if it's in your house and it's in a place that's kind of a high traffic area, you need to think about that.
Here's something I think it's never covered by insurance is if it gets sun faded.
Yeah, so gradual deterioration is an exclusion on any real insurance policy. And that's something that happens over a long course of time. It's just that's not something that insurance insures. But, if it's something that's sudden that happens to it, that would be something that's not, gradual deterioration.
I have a quick question about the story that you told. Was it his insurance that was covering it? When you take a piece on consignment, do you
when
insure
it's
it
here,
yourself?
I insure it. I've definitely had to call my lawyer before to see if I have any exposure to anything. No, I didn't deliver it. I didn't set up the art handling. And once it's gone and back in his house, that's his situation. And luckily I didn't have anything to do with it. But I did have a work of art coming here one time, and you may remember this. This was maybe 2018, and I love it when my clients listen to me. And this one didn't. And she booked the art handlers when it was convenient for her, but I'm not available. And I like to always be there. I treat your things like they're my things, and I care very much that everything's done properly. So it was I think a $70,000 work as well. It's a big metal with a very special finish, and they tried to get it in her freight elevator. It didn't fit, and they chipped it. And also it was clear that they hadn't worn gloves because there were fingerprints all over it. And one of many mistakes that was made, had I been there, when art handlers come, when they come here, when they go to your home, they sign a bill of lading, and on that document, which is a super important document, they note any condition issues. We always note condition issues. If you ever consign anything with me and you bring it in, we take pictures all over the place. We want to have great documentation of the state the work was in when it arrived. So later, if for some reason I don't sell it and it gets returned, then they can't say you did this, and I'll say, oh no, it's very important. That's all documented. But she didn't know that. I wasn't there. She didn't get a bill of lading. She let them walk right out the door. And then I'll say this: the company is no longer in business, and I understand why. But they simply denied that they did the things that she said that they did, and she was older and tiny, and I think that work of art was
huge.
I think it was hundreds of pounds. It was a big man, and I'm like, they said she did it.
Right.
I was like, oh, she didn't do that. She,
physically impossible.
And I had just taken pictures. I actually I took them with my Leica camera, so like really good quality photos, but because I took the photos like 3 days prior, they said, oh, she could have damaged it between that and that, so they didn't want those photos, but.
No, but that's such an important point that people don't understand, and I mean, that's kind of one of the things that I just would recommend, is that taking pictures of artwork before it changes hands is so important, because anytime you have a transfer of insurance responsibility, you need to establish the condition of the piece, and we see so many claims where it's kind of murky, and we don't know where the loss happened. And depending on the insurance transfer situation, it could fall on somebody else's policy or on yours, and that could make a big difference. But to your question about, who insures it, the real rule of thumb is if whoever has the art in their care, custody, or control should be insuring it. And so, that's kind of the standard. So for an art gallery, when they accept your works on consignment, they should be insuring it. And then,
And our consignment agreement says that,
Right.
we are,
Right.
and we are.
Right, so I hope that answers.
Yeah, and it also covers when we ship art.
Yeah.
So even if I'm driving with it in my car, I'm driving with a beautiful painting in the car yesterday, I can carry a very large amount of money's worth of art in my car. And I'm covered to do so.
Yeah, well, and that brings up the other most common loss, which is transit damage. People love shipping art via FedEx and UPS, which we hate. We hate it so much. It's the worst. But they're, as much as we tell people, please don't ship art FedEx, like, I love Amazon Prime just as much as anybody else and getting my things like next day. But when it comes to an artwork, that they are just not equipped to handle, objects in that way. They are literally trying to get it from point A to point B as quickly as possible. So it's an inevitable thing in the art world to have things being shipped that way. But I always say, if you are going to ship it that way, pack it in such a way that it could withstand a 3-story drop, because that's essentially what's going to happen when it's in the routing facility. It's going to be shot off of conveyor belts and all these things and moved around and everything, so just pack it to be able to withstand all of that excessive handling.
I heard a story that I can't forget, which is we were packing up a work of art that was coming here to the gallery, and the art handlers were telling me that they had once driven a very valuable work of art to Sotheby's. I work with Sotheby's all the time. We handle some real high-end art. We help our clients liquidate some very valuable things. He told me when he was at the loading dock at Sotheby's that there were people there whose whole job was just to sweep everything, that everything that comes off the truck broken, and they just, and it just killed me to think about this, but if you think that you can send something valuable in a normal way and expect it to be fine, you can't.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share with you, I bought a photograph in auction from a gallery in Boston, and it had a piece of glass on top of it, and I told them, to pack it very carefully and whatnot, and it arrived and it was all scratched.
Yeah.
And Heidi helped me say that it was worthless.
Wow.
But my point is that even from an auction house to their packers that they use, and I warned them about it, and it still got broken and ruined the photograph.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes, I
Big
do.
one?
Yes, I do. We have 2 things coming up at auction at Sotheby's this month. We have a lot coming up at Simpson Galleries next Saturday. We do work all the time with auction houses. We have a wonderful original Helen Frankenthaler painting, and we have a huge original Julian Schnabel painting, both coming up in September and Sotheby's. And for my client with the big Schnabel, her attitude was like, why does it cost $3,000 to ship? Let me explain. If it gets there and it's broken, it's gonna,
It's a lot more than
$3,000.
$3,000.
So, and it was very, very large, but, you can anticipate that it's gonna be a big bill if you're doing something like that.
Yeah,
So
I mean, everything in the world is going up in value, and art shipping there's no difference in that. The cost has gone up a lot, but.
All the more reason to buy your art locally where you don't have to ship it,
Here.
and we even will deliver it to your home, even the same day, just like gallery
She delivered a
furniture.
piece yesterday.
Yeah,
She won't put it in a convertible.
And I will not
Let
put
it
it in,
fly off.
I will not put it in here.
But you can
Okay,
borrow that convertible anytime you want.
oh, sorry,
Yeah.
there was a question.
Who would you recommend as the top 2 or 3 art transport? And who would you say were the worst?
Well, see, I can't do that.
I can, I mean, I'm not gonna disparage
Okay, I'll let
anybody
you do
in
it.
public, but there are people, that company that I told that story, they did go out of business, I understand why they went out of business. But, Thai Art is very good, DCM is very good, 360, I'm sure Kat's the one who usually sets all this up for us, Crate Works, all very reliable. If we're shipping internationally, we always go with Deedle. They handle all the international
Customs.
art fairs, customs, all that stuff. We do regularly, we have a client who's consigned a lot of really fine works by Andy Warhol with us. We tend to sell those in Europe, we sell those off of Artsy. And we, depending on what it is, you know, we ship it out, but Deedle would be like a very logical person who we would call.
I mean, I don't know, it may be on your list of questions, but my question is, why do a special art insurer versus scheduling it on your home?
Oh,
That's a good question.
great question. And you can do that, put it on your homeowner's insurance. But when it reaches above a certain amount, I would
10,000.
say over, I mean,
10,000.
10,000, you know, if it's a collection that's over like 100,000, you definitely wanna have a separate fine art policy. There's a couple of reasons. One is the claims that impact your homeowner's insurance won't impact your art insurance and vice versa, right? So there's separate loss ratios. So if you have a plumbing damage or roof damage or something, it's not gonna affect your art insurance policy. And similar, if you have an art loss, it's not gonna affect your homeowner's policy. Then the other reason is the coverage. So art policies cover things worldwide. Homeowners insurance would not really do that very well. And then again, it goes back to the specialized nature of the process, the actual claim process. They're not treating it as just a replaceable item, we're treating it as an art object essentially. But you know, insuring it under a homeowner's policy for a minor collector is a way to go. I have a minor collection and I don't have a separate fine art policy. I insure it, you know, with my homeowners. Yes.
So I'll answer that question because I went through that, I don't
Yeah.
know, a dozen years ago or something, and I won't mention the insurance company, but they're a good one. They were pestering me that anything that was in my collection that was above $10,000 that I need to have a separate, you know,
Scheduled.
I had to get an appraiser to come in
Yeah.
and appraise it, and then I had to put, you know, and I was like, okay, forget that. And so I called one of the top gallerists, Heidi, and another top gallerist, and got their recommendation, and so in any event, and I'm glad I did, because as she pointed out.
That's true, and we basically have two different types of policies for collectors. So we have a scheduled policy, which is totally itemized, and that means that only the objects that are on the policy are insured for specifically the amount that's scheduled. And then the other type of policy we have is a blanket policy. And so it basically looks at the whole collection and says, okay, you know, you have a limit of 200,000, 5 million, 1 billion, whatever it may be. And then you're insured automatically for any new acquisitions. Versus on a scheduled policy, you would have to call your broker or, you know, talk to them and have them add it to the policy. This does it automatically.
So we
Which
have the
one is-
blanket one because if
Right.
you were here.
Well, our
2 weeks
galleries
ago-
are always blanket.
Yeah, if you were here 2 weeks ago, we had a sculpture show.
Right.
So we are always bringing new things in and taking
Yes.
other things out, and so ours is changing always.
Yeah,
So
the
what's the
statistic
difference
on
in
that
price?
is about 80% of our collectors use a blanket scheduled policy, blanket policy, 20% use scheduled. And there's
What's the difference in
reasons.
cost? Let's just use $1
There's
million.
not really a difference. It's not a difference in cost, it just more has to do with how the policy responds. Because on a blanket policy, the valuation is current market value.
Yeah.
So it's not locked in on the value that's on the schedule. It can go up and down based off of the art market, which is also another benefit because you're not
That's blanket.
constantly having, yes, you're not constantly having to like be sure that the values are on point because you just have a blanket coverage. Now, you do want to get an updated appraisal, you know, every 3 to 5 years to make sure that you've got a good limit, but you know, you're getting broader coverage that way. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, on a blanket policy, let's pick a number, like, let's suppose you cover for 200,000, but then your pieces go up.
Yes.
And now they're worth like, 500,000, and then your
Right.
house burns down.
Right. Well,
What-
you'd be underinsured.
You'd be
That's where you need to up the limit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you get your appraisal back and all of a sudden it shot up, then you need to increase your limit on your policy. Cause yeah, the maximum that the policy will pay is the limit, yeah.
And when do you start insuring? Like, for example, let's suppose you're looking at a piece, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna bring this piece now to my home. Like, when does the coverage start? Like,
If you take it on approval from us, we're still insuring it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
when you buy it and you take possession of
Ownership,
it,
yeah.
then you're insuring.
And if you have a blanket policy, then it's covered.
It's
Yeah,
covered on
yeah,
that.
because our blanket policy actually covers artwork of others that you have on loan to you. So it could be covered under your policy as well. Yeah, it just depends on the agreement, which goes back to the point of documentation, you know, and having that clear documentation in order.
The biggest problem with the lack of documentation
Yeah.
is if you have a catastrophic loss and you have to try to remember what was there and try to create an inventory after the fact. I have a client who I worked with who had a, how do I say this? Elderly parent with dementia. One of the adult siblings was taking things from the house. And a lawsuit ensued, and they were trying to prove art that they had, and all they had was like pictures that you could see in the background at a party, like, can you tell that's it there? Like, and I was literally appraising from those kinds of images, which is, but unfortunately,
That's
in the
so
kind of
hard.
work we do, we see a lot of unpleasant things too.
Yeah.
I work very often with the states. My recommendation to anyone is if you have things of value, make plans before you
Before you die.
Before you die.
Just say it.
Yeah, I mean, like, just to put it really simply, like,
Now.
Just
I'm a
make
mom.
plans now,
I'm a
okay?
mom. I've got 2 kids, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's say, my daughter wanted the painting, my son wanted the coin collection, and then I die, and it turns out the painting's worth $8,000 and the coin collection's worth $80,000, and suddenly they
They're
hate each other for eternity.
Right.
Like, you don't want that to happen either. It's a very good reason to understand the value of what you have. But artist, I think you were trying to add something.
So I'm gonna take the other side, as a collector who
Yes.
takes her lunch money
Yes.
and buys art.
Yes,
I have a lot of art, some of it has not done well, and others have done very well.
that's awesome.
This is the problem, I can't afford an appraiser to come
Oh,
in
yeah.
and appraise. I have them well documented with provenance and receipts, but I have literally hundreds of pieces.
Yeah.
I can't afford to have an appraiser come in,
Yeah.
so I'm screwed.
No,
Is
no,
what-
you could get a policy, you
Get a
don't have
blanket
to have
policy.
get a blanket policy, you don't have to have an appraisal to get a policy. If it's, especially if it's lower valued artworks, I mean, if we're talking about things that are under $10,000, then the invoice value will
I always say,
suffice.
keep your receipts.
Yeah,
One of the things we regularly do for our clients is we digitize their receipts if they don't have them
Right.
digitized.
But, yeah,
But I would tell anyone, we love the CamScan app. You can just use your
oh,
phone,
sure,
and
yeah.
it makes a PDF instantly.
can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
How do you handle books art books that are signed,
Yes,
that have tremendous value?
yeah.
So does that cover under the policy also?
Yeah. We insure art libraries. I mean, collectors have art libraries, so that is definitely
So
something.
that falls
Yes.
under the blanket policy also?
Yeah, because, I mean, those things, like you said, they have tremendous value.
And then the last one, of course, is art jewelry.
Yes, so, well, jewelry, is also something that we do, and it
And
is
again,
very
we have
specialized.
I have provenance, I
Right.
have receipts, I
Right.
have pictures, my challenges.
Cat,
Get it
can you
covered.
pull some of the clear
Yeah,
chairs from the
yeah,
back table?
well, talk to me afterwards and let's,
I
we
can't stay
can
the whole
help
time,
you.
but I know who to talk
Okay,
to.
okay,
Yeah, got it.
yes, very good, yes.
Thank
Yes.
you, that was it.
Hi, I have a question. So, as an artist myself, obviously my whole place is full of my artwork, and about insuring it, whenever I take it to shows or take it to places for a show, does insurance have like a location tied to it, or is it just like a broad, wherever it goes, it'll be insured?
So we insure lots of artists, and artists have a blanket policy. And so it insures their work while it's in progress and also completed works. And so, and that coverage extends worldwide. So, you know, of course, if you send it to a gallery, you should be getting a certificate of insurance from them because they should be insuring it. But if it's something where, you know, you're just taking it to a collector or something, you know, that you could have it insured under your own
By
policy.
certificate of insurance, I think you mean what I call a consignment agreement.
Well, no, a consignment agreement is the actual contractual document
Mhm.
that, you know, the certificate essentially is pointing to, because our policy basically says what has been agreed, right? And so the consignment agreement is memorializing that agreement. The
Okay.
certificate of insurance is just proving that the gallery has insurance,
Oh,
right?
I've never given that to a client. I need to be giving that.
So
No,
for
you don't
example,
need to be giving it,
Okay.
but if they ask for it, they might ask
Okay.
for it.
I've been
Yeah.
asked for it when I've pitched like big public art
Right.
appraisal projects
Right.
that they need to know.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, they're assuming, you know, based off of the consignment agreement that you have insurance,
So
right?
I can't do business with anyone in my business without a certificate of insurance.
Yeah,
I have to show that before I can conduct any business.
Yeah. I mean, liability insurance is a little different.
Now, this is a
But-
certificate
yeah.
from Berkshire Hathaway that
Yeah.
says I'm insured.
Yeah.
And I can cover anything that occurs.
So,
So I assume you have a certificate of insurance.
yeah, I hope that answers your question though. You know, artists are it's tough because, you know, you're trying to just make art and, you know, insurance is like the last thing you want to think about. But, you know, definitely it's something you should look into because, you know, as you saw from the fires that happened at some, you know, at the studios, Spring Street, that can happen, and it's devastating. And so having that financial compensation to like help you buy more materials and start over again, you know, can really make a difference. Yeah.
Kind of a follow-up question for her wonderful questions. Art, what I would refer to as art pottery, something
Yes.
higher value, Newcomb, George Orr, things like that. Is that insurable with you guys?
Yeah. So our policy is incredibly broad.
Okay.
We insure all sorts of anything of rare historic value is
Okay.
insured under the art policy.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yes. Yes.
The real challenge is documenting.
Yes. Invoice.
That's what we do.
Take no offense, but it took me hundreds of
Oh, yeah.
hours to document.
I'll tell you, the first time I made an inventory was in the 90s. I had a newborn baby, I had a preschooler, and I was moving to Norway. And I brought a 20-foot and a 40-foot container of my household effects, and I had to create an inventory.
Oh, right.
And if you'd have told me, and I did it again when I moved back and forth from Qatar, if you had told me like, oh, you're gonna do that for a job someday, I'd be like, what? But, you know, it's one of those things, when it's not yours, it's easier somehow, I don't know. But, this is a regular part of what we do, so we do a lot of different kinds of inventories. A real common one we do is, someone just wants an inventory of everything they have. So, many of our clients who you've seen here in the gallery, we've created these for them. And they just wanna know what they have, a current fair market value, cause they're thinking like, do I wanna sell that, what do I? And we do that sort of thing, and then we sell a lot of secondary market art, and we'll discuss together, and we do that. Kat and I are working right now, I'm planning on turning it in, if not today, tomorrow at the very latest. You know, we went to a client's beautiful home, he set a threshold of $2,000 or higher to include on an insurance appraisal, and so we documented 168 objects, and then after we started to do the research, somehow miraculously the number landed on 100. Which was
Like
pretty
spot on.
pretty cute. Yes,
Wow.
I don't know how. Like, wait, what?
Fascinating.
But so, and they vary. The least expensive would be 2,000, and they go way up from there. But you know, everybody has sort of different stuff for us. In fact, he's gonna be calling you when he gets that document from me.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I'll go to a client's house and they'll just want to do 10. And we can do whatever anyone wants. I've got all different kinds of appraisals I set aside. I'm not gonna pass them around because I didn't take the time to redact them, but I can do this and it'll give you a pretty good understanding of it. In fact, would now be a good time to do that?
Sure, why not?
Okay, let me just.
And I think also to say is that while this is like the gold standard, something more low tech, low energy would just be a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet yourself, just documenting things. I love Excel spreadsheets because you can sum it up and, and that for me, from an insurance perspective, is what I need to be looking at. But that's a really easy way to add things up.
You can also use Google Sheets.
Video, yeah, if you walk around your house and take a video is an excellent thing to do. Even if you're not an art collector, just do it because it's so helpful after a loss. Yeah.
Raise your hand if you're in the room and you're an artist.
Just have
We got a
people,
few.
yeah.
So this is something I did for an artist.
Yeah.
He had a total loss, someone punctured his art all the way through, I think in maybe the Hamptons. And he was a Texas-based artist. Just so you know what a real appraisal looks like, not something that you just get from a gallery. Galleries, I am a gallerist and a credentialed fine art appraiser. Most gallerists are not credentialed fine art appraisers.
Right.
And they're not non-biased.
Right.
I have been asking people for numbers, and it kills me because I have the artist's work in my inventory, but I don't want to use my number. I want to use their number because they're the recognized expert, and I do have a conflict of interest. I'm biased, so I'd rather have their number. Bye, artists. But it's a real legal document.
Yeah.
It represents the object in court if it should go to a trial. It has lots of things that it has to say, a lot of statements, indemnifications, disclaimers. I know we have some lawyers in the room. And then, it has the object, it has images of the object and all the details and everything like that. So that's for an insurance loss. This is for a charitable contribution. It's sort of set up in the same kind of way. This one includes the deed of gift,
Right.
which is, so the date of the appraisal varies depending on the use of the appraisal. In this case, the deed of gift this was a gift to the Museum of Fine Arts, and it's got the deed of gift in the back and gives all the details. And we do help with this kind of thing all the time, and I am qualified and regularly sign IRS Form 8283, which is the one where we put the number down. And sometimes my clients say, let's say something was donated and it was $10,000, and they'll say like, what do you think we should write off, like 6? And my answer is no, 10. Like, that's the number. You write off the number I gave you. It's not costing the museum a penny if you write it off for 10. Write it off for 10.
I don't wanna tie you down or be too
Yeah.
specific, but in terms of the kind of services you're offering, going back to the example of where the guy set a materiality level of 2,000 and up.
Yeah.
What kind of hourly rate range would a
Would that
client be
cost?
looking at for that type of service?
To give a real easy answer, I tell people I charge $1,000 a day for my time.
Oh.
If you have an appraisal that is, a 20 object appraisal is gonna be $3,000. Our 100 object appraisal is not $15,000. I do a project rate, so they got
Okay.
a lower rate than that, but, it really depends on what it is. Sometimes I do deep research, that's where the day rate
Understood.
comes in more. I just did an appraisal of a fabulous Diego Rivera original drawing for an important institution in the city, and I gave them a special, I gave them a special rate. I give nonprofit rates and things like that, but, if you have a 10 object appraisal, maybe $2,000. But what you're paying for is like, this is real deep knowledge we have. This is,
absolutely.
yeah, and just to give, when we give an inventory, it looks something like this. I just
Right.
pulled this one out because this happens to be the Helen Frankenthaler we have coming up at auction. But we'll, this, I determined with the client which works she wanted to have valued. She had a spreadsheet I was looking at what was in her house, and I said, do you have an inventory? I'm looking at her spreadsheet. And she had to work on there, and I said, ooh, I just sold one of these last month. I don't see this in the house. And she said, oh, it's in my daughter's kitchen. And I said, oh, the one I sold for $90,000. I don't think you want that in the kitchen. But, and it all proves the point too, that art has this amazing ability. It can, it's rare for you to buy something and then it to just go.
Totally.
I can tell you a few artists whose prices
Right.
do that, and I do have clients who I'll say like, hey, this auction result just happened,
Right.
let's adjust that number on that appraisal I did for you, but that's pretty uncommon.
Yeah, you collect because you love the art, you know, and
This would be an example of a client with this was, an estate. We do work with estates, that was a busy summer. Another thing we do is if someone passes away and all the family members put their sticker on what they want, I'll tell you your file's worth this, your file's worth this. It's a regular thing I do. It's not an appraisal like this, but it's evaluation, it's something that we do.
Thank you so much for all the detail, and I have to say, just to editorialize for the crowd, you need to raise your prices.
You think I should?
I was not, I was expecting
I know people
much
who
higher.
charge way more than me.
Well, that's what I'm here to tell
Yeah,
you.
well,
And
it's amazing.
anyway, thank
It's
you.
so
Yeah.
valuable for so many reasons.
It is,
I
it
mean,
is.
from an insurance perspective, this is like gold standard because it definitely, you know, helps you understand what your exposure is.
I
so
do
that you
have a
can buy
redacted
limit
one,
that
in
makes
fact, I'll pass
sense.
that one around.
Yeah.
So now when you come back 2 years later, it's not the same cost to just update it?
Well, it's cheap, it's the most
cheaper.
expensive the first time.
Yeah, cause if you come back 5 years later, I need updates, then they've already got all of the documentation, so.
And if you've ever seen Kat handle art, if you've ever bought anything here and she has wrapped it for you, I have some hilarious pictures of her. I enjoy taking embarrassing photos of Kat. But we get in some pretty crazy situations. We go in our clients' garages, attics,
Yeah.
in places people don't normally go, and we're measuring, we take such good care of everything.
Yeah.
We have such great photos of everything. When you see a report that has one photo, you can be sure there are a gazillion that aren't in there. We have something called a work file. When I show my clients, oh, let me show you my work file for you, like, what? It's huge. If we put it on the report, you wouldn't be able to carry the report. So it's real important, and the bottom line is, if you have that kind of documentation.
It makes it so much easier.
So here's a work of art I broke. Were you here and saw the beautiful Mary Schaefer steel triangle with the glass over it?
It looked like the glass was like a liquid almost.
It
like
was in this show we had with David Brown, objects from David Brown and other private collections. And that was not David's, it was a beautiful sculpture, and honestly, it was one of those things, someone came in and I got pressure to kind of move it quickly when I wouldn't have normally. In fact, it was way too heavy for me to carry. Just the steel alone was 60 pounds,
Right.
and then the glass was actually very heavy. But we got it moved, and just as I was placing the glass back where it just went,
shattered.
and it was $20,000, and I was very unhappy with myself. And I immediately took photos of
Yes.
everything, and I had
Didn't
lots
throw
of.
anything away.
Didn't throw anything away.
Yes.
In fact, I kept that stuff for a very long
Yes.
time. So, and I got in touch with Adrienne, and I'm super happy to say she was very nice. And no one yelled at me. No one made me feel bad. Not even the consignor, who understands how the real world works. And so what ended up happening was, you set me up with an adjuster.
Yes.
And I sent everything, you know, the documentation of what happened, the date it happened, photos before and after and all that. And then he asked me to get in touch with the artist to see if the artist could make a new piece of glass. And the artist, in fact, had a spare. It does happen, she's a glass artist, and it does happen, and work breaks sometimes. And so the deal she had with me was, the sculpture was $20,000. She would send me a new piece of glass for $10,000, and that would make it right.
Mhm.
But the consignor didn't want that.
Right.
The consignor said, I just want the money. So I told the adjuster, wasn't sure what he was gonna say, but he
Right.
said, fine.
Yeah.
So that played out, the consignor got paid in full, we had a consignment agreement, it was
Yeah.
all spelled out, what everything was. He got exactly what he would have gotten had I sold it.
Mhm. Yep.
Yes, and we didn't get anything, cause I didn't sell it, I
Right.
broke it.
If you
So-
had sold it and then you had broken it, then you would have gotten your percentage. Yeah. Mhm.
Well, but the thing is I'm frequently telling my clients, like, I think this would be a good question for your lawyer, I think this would be a good question for your insurance agent, I think this would be a good question for your accountant. And in this one, like, there's never an instance where you're making money off of your insurance
Oh,
claim.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
fraud,
that's
you know,
fraud.
that's a
Right.
big no-no.
Right.
And as I have said very, very often, I'm in business to make money,
Yeah.
and my reputation is everything, and I'm not gonna do anything to hurt my reputation, because then I can't make money.
Where did the leftover piece go?
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't
Oh,
finish
yeah,
the story,
keep going.
so
This is
the,
I'll buy it.
so here's how that played out.
So it was a total loss though.
So it was a
Okay?
total
And from
loss.
an insurance perspective, that means that the art is now salvage and it, you know, it says not, doesn't have,
I have on
can't
occasion,
be used again.
I have on occasion had someone come in, try to consign a work that had been declared a total loss,
Yeah.
that they subsequently went and had restored and then wanted me to do it, and I'm,
No.
cannot help you, I cannot touch that. No, but here's what happened with that.
That's
So then the adjuster said, would you be interested in paying the $10,000 and owning the work of art yourself?
Right.
And so then I thought, well, I could put $10,000 into it, then I got a $20,000 work, but then I still gotta sell it, but I would get 100%, which is not what I'm used to getting around here. And I said, you know, I like it conceptually, but I just don't have the money for that right now. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And my accountant wouldn't verify that. And, so what he ended up doing was he had me have someone come and take it away, and I got a receipt back from, I think, C&D Scrap Metal for $8. And
That was the value
I
of the scrap.
sent that
Yeah.
along with the check.
To the insurance company.
And that was, yeah, that was scrapped.
I know, I thought that was
Whoa,
hilarious.
$8, I'll give you
$8.
16.
I know. I was kind of shocked actually that it wasn't more valuable than metal.
Well, I
itself.
actually got a hilarious
They have it
picture.
in their office. They
I
didn't
got
make
a,
scrap.
I got a hilarious picture of the guy who picked it up, was this great big, super strong guy. There happened to be a construction project going on here, so I just begged, like, could someone help me? I can't even fix it. And I got a picture of him, he wore it around his head like a necklace. I mean, it's like it's 60
So
pounds.
crazy.
But anyway, yeah, it's gone
Yeah.
forever now.
Yeah.
I was trying to follow your story, was
Yeah.
that a secondary market?
Yes, it was a
Okay.
consigned work here, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So,
I mean, you know, it's a good story, you know, to say, you know, here's what happened, here's how it could have played out, and, you know, everybody was made whole, right?
that's right, that's the whole point of
And
insurance.
that's the point of insurance, is to make you whole, so.
So I also want to point out something, because I've had, you know, a piece of art that got flooded, and the insurance company will say, okay, if you send it back to us, this is what, you know, you get 100%. If you want to keep it, you know, they have a
Right.
different term.
Yeah.
So
there's
address that.
a partial loss,
Yeah.
which means that it can be restored or it's not totally damaged. And if that happens, then basically you're paid the cost of restoration, and then if there's loss in value. So essentially,
Yeah.
you do your best to repair it,
Right.
but there's still a depreciation in value because it's
Right.
been damaged.
Right.
So the insurance company will pay out that. If it's a total loss, then you get paid 100%
Yeah.
of the value of the piece.
And now let's say that.
And then it becomes property of the insurance company,
Yeah.
like the salvage.
Yeah. And now let's say that a piece that I got paid that was damaged or ruined,
Yes.
and I said, no, just give me the whole amount, and I get the whole amount, and then the insurance company didn't want the piece back, because they don't
Yes.
want to ship it.
Yes.
Can I then gift that to somebody?
No.
No.
So I'll
So
tell you
what-
all
what
a funny
happens-
story.
okay.
So this was actually a pretty painful moment in my career as an art insurance broker. So we had a gallery that, you know, we insure, and they had a total loss to a work on paper. It was a very valuable, probably about $100,000 work on paper. And it was a total loss. It was absolutely just totally destroyed. But the piece was still intact. Because of the nature of the artwork, it was a total loss. So he got paid 100% of the value, right? And then he was supposed to send it back to the insurance company, right? Because he's been paid 100%. We're not gonna pay you and then you get to keep it, right? It doesn't work that way. But he, anyway, didn't end up sending it. And one day I was visiting him and I said, how's it going? You know, did you send that piece? No. And he's like, I've got it here in the back. They told me to destroy it, but he's like, I can't do it. I can't destroy it. Like it was
we would destroy
against
it.
his nature, right?
Wow.
And so I called the insurance adjuster and I said, hey, you know, we need to destroy this piece because he got paid a total loss. Can I destroy it? You know, would that be okay? Because it needs to be done. They were like, yes, just destroy it and then take pictures, of the evidence. So he went into another room because he could not watch me do this. And I get the scissors, and I'm like super nervous because I'm like, oh my god, this thing is like more valuable than like my car, And so I'm cutting it very carefully, and then I realize like, why am I cutting it so carefully? And I just start ripping it, and basically, yeah, it was a total loss, and we destroyed it, and that was the end of the story. It was tough though for me because I'm in the business of protecting art. So
artists are frequently
So,
surprised to
let
hear
me
me
ask you
say,
a question.
I regularly recommend to artists that they destroy their work.
yeah,
And one reason is, first of all, it's not all your best work.
Right.
yeah,
And
that's true.
the worst thing you can do for your market is if you're an artist who's sold well, to die and to have a lot of unsold inventory will really hurt the future value of your art. So, and John Baldessari famously cremated a lot of his early work, and he made art out of the cremated remains.
Yeah.
And sold that, and I think it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all remember the Banksy girl with the balloon that was at auction and then shredded, right? That was like my insurance nerd in me was going berserk because first it was like, was it intentional? Was it not intentional? Was the
It was totally
auction house
intentional.
involved?
Yeah,
And of course, it was totally intentional. So, and then the value of the piece actually like tripled
Because it
or
was
something.
fully shredded,
Yes,
right? There was still
exactly.
part of it that remained.
Because it was a malfunction.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, I could talk for hours about that incident from an insurance perspective. It was fascinating.
Well, I would love to jump to, how does a gallery collector or museum determine how much coverage they need? And before you answer that, and I can't wait to hear your answer, but I just wanna say something, which is, I personally think a lot of people are really overinsured.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I look at a lot of appraisals. When I go to do an appraisal, I will say, do you have a prior appraisal? And sometimes people think I'm cheating, but it's super not cheating. I'm just looking at what your last appraisal was, and I'm gonna do my own work, but it does give me some context. But I'll be looking at things particularly like what I would call, in a very vague term, antique paintings.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say paintings that are prior to the 20th century. And I think in the past, people put a really high value on those. If you watch the auction markets at all, you'll know that people are not collecting these things at all.
Right.
And so I was visiting with a client who had some beautiful, he was Dutch, he had some very beautiful early Dutch art that had been in his family a long time. He was living by Rice University, and I said, do you have a prior appraisal? And he said, yeah, and he gave me the appraisal, and I looked at it, and I said, the work was valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I said, I can tell you without doing any research that I'm gonna come in with a way lower number than this.
Yeah.
I don't even need to start doing research to guarantee that. And his response was, well, I don't care, because if there's a hurricane and I lose everything in a flood, they'll pay me this amount. And I said, no, they won't. Like, in my opinion.
Well, okay,
Tell us.
yeah, there's two answers to that.
All right.
Because if you have a blanket policy, they will not pay that amount because it'll be a current market value. And the current market value has unfortunately gone down, right?
Yes.
So it's going to pay what the market currently would pay. If he had a scheduled policy though, and it was agreed value, then yes, he would be paid that
Agreed
amount.
by who?
Agreed by the insurance company.
So
When
I
you
mean,
get a scheduled policy, they are putting it into the contract that the value that will be paid, and it's a contract, will be the
does
scheduled
there
value.
need to be any justification?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, no, I mean,
So
they're
they
not
won't just
gonna.
say, like, I can't insure my
very creative.
my Range Rover for $1 million and go,
No.
oh, I crashed it, here's my $1 million.
And you've gotta have a legitimate appraisal. Sometimes we get wacky
I
appraisals
bet
that
you
come
do.
in. I mean,
I've seen
you've
some
got some
myself.
beautiful things, but
Yeah.
I mean, one time I just like couldn't stop laughing because we had this, of course we get these calls all the time. They say, oh, there's this Van Gogh that's never been seen before, and it's in a bank vault, and it's never been insured, and it's worth, $100 million, and we need it insured like now, and it's usually on a Friday afternoon. And, we're like, oh geez, here we go. It's art fraud all over the, just, anyway, we always say, okay, fine, send us the appraisal document, and then we'll take a look at it, right? One time I got this appraisal document. It was like 60 pages going on and on and on and on and on about the piece and comparables and yada yada. Then at the end, the value said value, priceless.
I've seen some crazy stuff. One thing I'll get on occasion is people will come and ask me to authenticate something for them.
Yeah.
And I'll say, what makes you think I'm qualified to authenticate this? And they'll say, well, you're an appraiser.
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh, that's a conflict of interest. An appraiser and an authenticator are never
Two
the same
different
person.
things.
Can you imagine how I could do bad things with both of them together? And the guy says, I am, absolutely certain this is Gustav Klimt. I just need a document from you saying that it's by Gustav Klimt. And I'm like, you
need
think
that.
I'm qualified to authenticate a Klimt? Yes. And I'm like, no, I'm not. He would go to whoever's the noted scholar who wrote the catalog raisonné,
Right.
who is associated with it, who's the foundation. And so he said, no, I've done this before. And I said, you've walked into a random gallery and they've written you a document of authenticate. And he said, yeah. He was so sure he was right and I was wrong. He came back later with the document.
Wow.
It's on my computer.
Wow.
I did
Very
scan
bold.
it because, and it was,
Don't use this person.
Yeah.
and it was like,
So ridiculous.
it was from Europe, so he was looking for one in the United States. And what he had was a pastel drawing of a recognizable work by Gustav Klimt, and he was certain it was the study of the original.
Right.
And I said, well, do you know how art school works? Like, you copy stuff, it's like, it's not fraud, it's just how you learn, right? This is just, someone did a very nice charcoal drawing. You could go to the Museum of Fine Arts and probably see someone doing something like this right now.
That's how we learn.
But he showed me this authentication document where the authenticator said, well, I looked and the signature looks like the signature on this one. And it's like, oh. And for the record, when you're touching a signature, that is when you're walking into fraud territory. And we work with art conservators all the time.
Yes.
We have a client who has a Banksy where the signature was done in a kind of pen that faded away.
Of course.
And he wanted me to find him a conservator who would fix that for him. And I'm like, I would not work with that conservator. Yeah, I can't be associated with that. Anyway, that's when you're stepping into fraud territory and all
And
that.
just to say, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people think that art insurance means if you had something that wasn't authentic and it actually wasn't, would you get paid for that? And the answer is no. That's a title issue. That's not something that's covered under an art insurance policy. It's a financial loss, absolutely, but it's not a physical damage to the object. So
That's
important
interesting.
distinction.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Surely there's a question.
Yeah.
Just to follow on that, in the event something is a fake,
Yes.
pardon my crude terminology, and it is damaged, is there any restoration relief?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, just because, let's say you bought it for $100,000 and it turns out it's actually worth $1,000, it's still owned by you, right? And it still was physically damaged.
Right.
So, it will cover the cost of restoration or repair.
And if the cost of restoration was above $1,000 value?
That's what I was just gonna say, in no case would an insurance company pay more on restoration than the total value of the piece. They're not going, we had this museum that they had this ancient pottery thing, and the shelf fell down and collapsed. And it got destroyed into like 1 billion pieces. I mean, like dust. And I mean, it was obviously a total loss. But the museum actually wanted to put it back together. And the adjuster was like scratching his head because he was like, this is gonna take years, for them to do this. And so they worked out a deal basically where they were like, okay, you can start working on this and we'll pay for the cost of you putting it back together. But at a certain point, we're gonna stop paying for that because we're never gonna pay more than the value of the piece, right? Once, you know, it moves beyond that territory, you're on your own, you know? And they did actually end up putting it back together. It was amazing.
Wow.
It was incredible. Conservators are magicians, by the way. Just
We can
absolutely-
recommend good ones
yeah.
if you need them.
So useful. Yes.
I worked in the insurance industry for years,
Oh,
but
cool.
never with art
Art
insurance.
insurance.
But
Yes.
at one of the conferences I attended, and because I'm a museum and gallery nerd, I said, oh, here's the topic on art insurance. So I went to listen to that.
Cool.
And I was amazed, and this was like over 10 years ago, 15 some years ago, before all this crazy kind of weather we're having. And
Yeah.
here, I would have assumed things like flood and hurricane damage and big losses to big houses and great locations would be the major cause of loss.
Yeah.
And even back then, the underwriter for this international carrier said, so, you know what our single cause of loss is? Wildfire damage, and then it was, you know, well, like in Hawaii right now,
Right.
but particularly in the mountains
Yeah.
of the West
Yeah.
that are these luxury communities.
Oh,
She said,
yes.
that's our biggest exposure risk is wildfire damage.
Yeah.
What are you seeing today? Has
Oh,
anything
boy.
changed in that? Or
Boy,
what are the scariest things for underwriters to insure in terms of
Yeah.
locations or properties where a lot of art is held?
Yeah, no, it's such a great question, because catastrophic climate natural disasters is a huge part of the insurance industry right now, which is causing insurance rates to go up a lot, even on your homeowner's insurance, right? And their property insurance is going up. So for art insurance, we sort of get a trickle down effect of that because of course, you know, you can move art, right? If there's a wildfire or hurricane. And so we don't get that much sort of catastrophic losses that happen, but they absolutely do impact the insurance industry. So yeah, we had significant wildfire losses in California, especially in 2017, 2018. There was actually a collection that the entire house just burned to the ground, and but they had kept some of the most important drawings in a fireproof safe in the middle of the house. And so those pieces actually survived. It was incredible. It was really amazing. But hurricanes, of course, is a big cause of loss. Here we are in Houston, so top of mind always. Flood, I mean, when it rains, it floods here, so, you know,
I have to tell you something
yeah.
that I saw one time. This is not any expert thing, it's just interesting. I was visiting a friend in Sun Valley where there are a lot of very wealthy people, and we drove by this property and there were people stationed all around the property, and I said, what is that? And she said, that's a private fire department. In the event of a wildfire, it's cheaper for them to pay to have private firefighters around the home. In the event a wildfire breaks out, then it would be to cover the claims. They clearly have a lot of really expensive stuff in there. And I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well, and I'll tell you that some insurers just completely stepped out of California, like AIG and Chubb, they are not writing anything in California after the losses.
A follow-up question related
Yes.
to my museum nerd side.
Yes.
So I've often wondered, when you see a really special work from a private collection on long-term loans,
Yes.
is there perhaps an insurance benefit because the institution is paying the cost of insurance on that, or just not even having it on your property because you own this great piece of art, but you don't give it at least at that point, but you are putting it on a long-term loan, but then you don't have to worry about insurance and protection for that period. So
Yeah, it's a
is
good
that
deal.
legitimate thing?
It definitely happens, yes, yes.
You want to hear something else that's pretty crazy? I've helped people liquidate real high-end stuff because they couldn't afford the insurance.
Yeah, that's sad. But I mean, yeah,
It's
to
like
your
selling a
point.
house because you can't afford to pay the insurance.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And like,
For
I mean,
really,
from
really
a,
expensive stuff.
from a gallery perspective, you're not in the business of storing people's art either, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
so I have galleries that say to me, my inventory is getting so high, I need to get that art out because they're paying for the premium to insure it. And so it's a business expense for them. And so if the more reduce their inventory, the less expensive, you know, costs they're paying, you know, and so it's a balance, right? I mean, for museums, of course, there's long-term loans that happen all day long. it's a delicate art of negotiation and diplomacy, and sometimes that's just the only way that they can get the piece with the hope that eventually it'll be donated to the museum, right? So there's always that kind of scenario, yeah. Yes.
I have a question about shipping
Yes.
insurance. So if you have an exhibit that's maybe at a gallery, maybe at just an event space, and the artist, you need to move, and it's a particular artist I'm involved with that has a very historical piece.
Yeah.
And I'm sure none of it is insured, it's just in her house and stuff, but how does that work? Is that
Yeah.
just insurance for the transportation part, or is it a broader policy?
Right. We get calls about that a lot, all the time. People don't have an annual policy, but they need it insured during the transit, because that's when art is most at risk, right? We don't offer, and no art insurance company offers a one-trip policy, because it's adverse risk selection. It's essentially, you're at a higher probability of a loss happening. So what I would say in that situation is see if the shipper offers some type of insurance. So some art shippers do carry a blanket policy, and they'll basically, charge you premium to be able to use their policy. It costs more money, but it's a way to insure
But
it
you
on
have
a
to be
one-off
careful
basis.
about them, because sometimes, I've noticed with art handlers too, like what they actually pay is.
Yeah, they'll try to mark it up, which is actually not, okay.
Yeah.
Cause they're not in the business of selling insurance.
But if the artist had the work insured under one of these.
Yeah, then it would be covered, right, and that's the benefit of an
Probably
annual
exclusion
policy.
period, it might be 90 days or whatever.
No,
Something you
no,
can
I
buy.
mean, once you have a policy in force, it's covered for the year, and it's covered
For
in
example,
transit and
we
all
have
of that.
the blanket policy, we shipped that Helen Frankenthaler painting to Sotheby's, and
Yeah.
I called you for
Yeah.
extra insurance,
To increase it.
just for that shipment.
Yeah.
And and I wrote a separate check just for that one thing, just to ship it.
When
We-
does Sotheby's insurance take over? Upon them signing that it's there?
When they get it and they open, so I'm always bugging them like, has it arrived? Have you opened it yet?
Right.
How's the condition?
Right.
Because, and if you don't bug them, they'll take their time letting you know, but I'm sure my clients want to know immediately, how did we do? So, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're a collector and you're sending something to Sotheby's, you can actually just have it insured under your policy and not have them insure it, because, they'll charge you an arm and a leg to insure it, versus on your policy, you have coverage to do that. Now, that may not be something you wanna do, because if there's a loss, then it would impact your record, right? But it is definitely something that people do all the time, yeah. Oh, okay.
If you have art that's framed, what about the frame?
Oh,
Is it
yeah,
considered
frames can be very
totally
valuable.
separate or
No,
considered
it's
all one?
covered under the policy.
Sorry?
It is covered under the policy, yeah.
Do you recommend removing glass before you ship something?
Yes, of course,
Kat, did you get it?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, to your example, I mean, it's just, forget
So
about it,
stupid
it's
of
too,
them to do
yeah,
that.
they should have removed it. There's a question.
Can we come back to the cost question? So about what guidance can you give us for a blanket policy for, let's say, a $200,000 collection, and how does that premium scale?
Yeah.
Let's say if it's 400,000, is it twice that number, and how does it scale up?
No, the rate of coverage actually goes down the higher you go in the limit. There's a minimum premium for us, it's $500 for a collector policy. And depending on where you are and what type of collection it is, it could range between $100,000 of coverage to $300,000 of coverage, right? And so that $500 minimum premium covers you for the entire year, and then also covers in transit and other locations. So it's a very broad policy for pretty nominal cost. But if it goes up beyond that, then yes, the premium will go up, but not like double, not exactly,
Yeah, and
So
so
you're saying
are you
300,000 would be
so
$500?
are you saying for, so let's say approximately to start with, let's say it's 200,000.
Yeah.
The premium could be $500?
Yeah.
That sounds so nominal.
I know, that's what I'm
Not-
saying.
You
So-
don't need to
Yeah.
sign up today.
I mean, it's a small amount, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small amount, and if you think about the level of coverage that you're getting, it's
Ours is a
incredible.
lot more than that.
Yeah. So, earmuffs, Heidi. But art dealers and galleries, you're in the business of turning art, right? And so their rates are higher, but that's because there's a lot more movement involved. For collectors, the assumption is essentially that it's gonna stay on your wall for the most part.
Yeah.
So the collectors actually have the cheapest premium rate of all classes of art, risk.
And in fact, I'd love Kat to chime in on this one. So, I regularly get calls from Sarah Balinskis, arguably the finest framer in Houston, and Kat used to work for Sarah. And I would get calls because Sarah would ask someone to declare a value, and they would say, I don't know, and then she would say, call Heidi. And it's a nice way to get some business. But, Kat, when you're dropping something off at the framer, the client is paying the insurance, not the framer.
Actually, so at a place like Sarah Balinska, preservation studio like that, they would insure the art. And of course, it gets more complicated depending on what people have had, but in our experience, we have often told people, if it's here and it's something that we did, or something that occurs, we're responsible for it. But of course, if a riot occurs, we would not be, that would be something beyond.
I mean, for me, I think it's cleaner to have either one person insure it or another person insure it, not to distinguish between, we were at fault, or you were not at fault, or it was an act of God, or, because then you're getting into there was a theft, but you left, the alarm system off, so you're at fault. It kind of gets into the minutia, and I don't think that that's a good thing to do.
If you were the owner of the artwork, would you plan to insure your own?
So if I had a collector policy, I have the wherewithal under my policy to insure it myself. And I would say that if the framer is able to insure it, and their insurance is good, then I would have them insure it, and I would ask for a certificate of insurance to prove that they do have insurance. Because if there's a claim, then it goes on their record, not mine. But, if I didn't feel comfortable with their insurance for whatever reason, or maybe their insurance was inadequate, then I could fall back on my own policy to cover it,
And going back to the cost, one more time. What difference in the premium does it make if your collection is in two homes, your primary home and
great
second
question.
home?
So that kind of gets to the question which we didn't totally cover, about how do you choose what limit of insurance to buy. So if you have multiple homes, then really you just need to figure out, it's not like, unless they're right next to each other or like in the city of Houston, together, that would be impacted by one single event, like a hurricane. Then you would just look at the highest valued location and buy insurance up to that amount, because you're covered under your policy for the scheduled locations up to the total value, up to the total limits. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a beach house, you have a penthouse in New York, you have a beach house in Florida, and you have your home here in Houston. Each of them has $500,000 worth of art, let's just, for easy. So your total collection value is $1.5 million. There would be no situation where that loss would happen, right? Where you would need to be recouped for $1.5 million, because there would be no loss that would impact all three locations at the same time, right? Unless it's nuclear and that's not covered, right? And so you would just basically buy $500,000 of coverage, because that's your highest exposure for an event that's covered by insurance. So, and you don't pay to add, the policy doesn't charge for additional locations. It's considered a spread of risk from an insurance perspective.
They love it.
They love it because, you're not, if you had a fire that impacted one, it's not gonna impact the other. So it's just a way to sort of reduce your probability of loss, So, and museums do that. We insure a lot of museums across the United States. And, they look at what their probable maximum loss scenario is and buy insurance based off of that. Because in no situation would they basically the entire museum blow up all at once, right? Like that's just not Like, again, it goes back to nuclear, which is not covered. So, you know, they take a measured approach on that. And collectors can do the same thing as well. And that's the benefit of a blanket policy is too, by the way, is that, you know, you don't have to buy to the total value of your collection, you know, versus, you know, your scheduled policy you do because it's an itemized schedule, but on a blanket policy, you could buy up to a loss limit. So it's just something that you feel more comfortable with. Yes?
You said nuclear is not covered, what else is not covered? And I guess the addendum to the question is, could you get extra coverage for nuclear?
No. Yeah, we'd have bigger problems. War and nuclear are the two catastrophic losses that the insurance industry just, you know, won't touch because it's a magnitude issue. It will impact their entire book and they financially wouldn't be able to survive that.
I even have to address that in my appraisals. I literally have to say in my appraisals, I'm not responsible for acts of war. And
Yeah.
I literally have to say that in my.
Yeah.
So are they considering terrorism?
Terrorism is separate.
I have terrorism insurance.
You do, yeah.
It wasn't that expensive.
And a lot of people ask, you know, about climate activists, right, and them gluing themselves to the painting and all of that. That's considered a sort of vandalism event, not a terrorism event. You know, and so it would be covered just under the policy normally. But terrorism is something that you can buy optionally, yeah. And, you know, the exclusions beyond war and nuclear are wear and tear, gradual deterioration. So those are things that happen over a long course period of time.
And we'll see
not
that
covered.
a lot, you know,
Yeah.
when we're covering things, when we're doing an inspection, we write always about the condition.
Yeah.
And there will be things that just naturally deteriorate over time.
And then the other is inherent vice, so that's something within the object that kind of causes it to self-destruct, similar to gradual deterioration.
Acid damage, for example.
Yeah. And then the last part of that is loss or damage due to restoration, retouching, and refinishing. So if the conservator uses the wrong chemical and damages the piece, that's not covered. That's sort of like conservator malpractice, if you think about it that way. But if they sort of spilled their coffee onto it, that would be covered. So those are the exclusions under our policy.
And
So
I
anything else is covered.
I just want to say, because it's a juicy story, if you come here regularly, you've probably heard me tell the story. But when I was mentioning earlier the painting that we sent for 5 million euros with Lloyd's of London to Europe, interestingly, when we did eventually sell that painting, we did not sell it for 5 million euros, we sold it for $2 million, which is significantly less. The reason it was less is because in the 60s, the painting had traveled across the United States for an exhibition, and what was best practices at the time was it was affixed directly to a piece of masonite to stabilize the canvas. It didn't hurt the painting in any way, but it could never be removed. And the fact that it could never be removed cost $3 million plus
on the value
total
of the
value.
piece, yeah.
So, and now what we do, and I'm very quick to say, we work with the best conservators. Conservators don't do anything now that can't be reversed.
Exactly.
It's super important. So I'm sure
Yeah.
we've all seen stories of conservation
Yes.
gone wrong.
Yes.
I know a friend of mine recently told me a story about a Noguchi sculpture in New Orleans that was a marble sculpture, and someone thought it'd be better painted with oil paint.
Right.
But like with conservation, it's got to be something you can take back and fix and remove.
Yeah.
But conservation is something that we address in our appraisals, you know, when we talk about the condition. And just for the record, if you saw that, we only use 3 terms, and we don't use things like very good condition or you know, exemplar or anything. We just say good, fair, and poor, and we define what each of those means. And it's important to define what you mean, but bad restoration would put you in the fair to poor, but good restoration could actually improve the value. So.
Yeah. Good. Yes.
Can you talk about absolute liability and agreements and the pros and cons for a lender to include that language in there?
Are you from a museum or are you?
From the Mineal.
Okay, great, yeah. We just had to talk about that. Okay. You just leading me up to this. I love it. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because museums will often get agreements from collectors, loan agreements, basically saying that the museum is totally, completely responsible for anything and everything that could happen to the piece. And that really puts the museum in a bad situation because they're not covered for everything, right? We just talked about all these exclusions, right? So if there's a damage that's caused by one of these exclusions, the museum's not insured. They don't have insurance for it, right? It's not covered. But because of the loan agreement, the contract between the lender and the museum, they are still responsible to the lender for that. So it puts them at jeopardy, financial jeopardy. And we talk about this a lot with museums because they have to be aware and understand the implications that happens when the lender puts that clause on their loan agreement. And most of the time, once the museum sort of explains what the broader implications are of it, you know, the lender will back down, but sometimes they won't because they have very aggressive attorneys, and you know, I get it, they want to make sure that they're paid, but you know, the reality is that if you have a piece that's, say, you know, $50 million or something, you're lending it to the museum, something bad happens to it, it's not covered, how is the museum actually going to pay for this piece, you know? And so you're actually financially putting the institution at jeopardy, which I imagine that most lenders don't necessarily want to do. Like they're not trying to, like, you know, jab at the museum or something, right? So yeah, the contractual agreements on the loan agreement should basically say, it should be a very clear balance between what's covered by insurance and what you're holding them liable for. And it should be exactly identical because the museum should only be responsible for what they're insured for. Yeah. Great question. Great. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Why do you think other institutions, knowing this,
Yeah.
will include that language?
Yeah, because it's a negotiation tactic that they will use, and they're just using it as a tool to basically negotiate other things. It's not good faith, definitely not. But it happens, yes. You had a question.
Yeah, so my question, I'm still like struggling, and it might be versus scheduling versus blanket.
Yes.
How do you decide which way to go?
Yeah, I mean, I have some collectors that they have a very stable collection. They're not planning on acquiring very much. And they really want the certainty of knowing that they're insured for exactly, you know, X amount. So a scheduled policy makes sense for them. They like to see it, they want the contract, they want the agreed value, and for them it works. But for most people, they're actively buying, and so they want the flexibility of having a blanket policy because it automatically covers them for everything that they own, and then it also covers them for current market value, which could change, you know, based off of the art market. So, you know, it depends on the collector and where they're at and what they're interested in. But I hope that answers your question.
It does. So, and then just to be specific, does blanket cover you if you have a piece at the framer? It sounds like yes.
Yes.
But then what if you're like borrowing a piece to look at and try to see if it fits in your home?
Yeah, it covers both your owned artwork and artwork in your care, custody, or control that you don't own. Yeah,
scheduled would not do that.
No, that would not. You would have to schedule it. Yeah, because it only covers the scheduled objects, like exactly those items.
And then one other silly specific question: is there a deductible with art?
Yes. So most collector policies that we write don't have a deductible. It's a zero deductible policy. Some have $1,000 deductible, some have $5,000 deductible. It just depends on your, you know, tolerance for risk. Obviously you would get a credit, you know, in the rate if it's a higher deductible. But yeah, yes.
Is there ever a situation where you would want both policies? Like maybe you have a collection and I want some of them under the blanket and some of them under schedule.
Yeah, some insurers do that. We don't do that. It's just, you know, it just makes it more complicated, to be honest. So, you know, I think that there's no cost benefit of doing it that way. So I would just, but some insurers do that, yeah.
Because I'm thinking, because you said that under a blanket, the prices fluctuate depending on the market at the time.
Right.
And so if you have some of your most expensive pieces under schedule policy, that you're guaranteed to get at least something back.
Yeah, I mean, but are you really expecting the pieces to go down in value? And then are you trying to like game the system? You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, you know, because you could be like, ooh, I know my antique, you know, cabinet chest is gonna go down in value, so I'll schedule it. Like, you know, I mean, that's.
Oh, wow.
Right? I mean, I don't know, I see, I understand, and every collector has their own specific situation, so I would say talk to your broker and figure out what makes the most sense, yeah.
But are you then saying that your art, policy would cover the chest?
Well, yeah, if it's a scheduled policy, you know, then it would be agreed value, right?
But if it's not scheduled, your blanket art policy
would
is not
cover
gonna.
it, but the value would be lower because it's current market value, and let's just say the art market or the antique market went down, which it does.
It does, it does.
So,
and I'm quick to say, it doesn't mean it isn't beautiful.
yeah, it is a super beautiful, but it's just, you know, grandma stuff is not super popular right now, right? I just sold my my parents' encyclopedia set, this beautiful set, and I remember when they bought it when I was a kid. But I sold it on Facebook Marketplace for like $20. It was so sad. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. But honestly, it was taking up so much space in our house that I was just like, oh, anyway. We have one more question?
Yeah, I didn't mean to go anywhere near this long. Oh, I didn't even realize it was.
I know, I'm like.
Oh, I thought we were gonna be 1
people
hour.
falling over.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's all right. There is more wine and beer and food and everything, so.
The definition of art is kind of expanding,
Yes.
you know, furniture is kind of a big deal, so you cover furniture.
Yeah, right.
And
Like
does it have
decorative.
to be kind of reviewed as to, this furniture is actually quote art?
Yeah, you would wanna have a discussion with your broker about that, you know, if it's just a sofa that you bought, you know, at whatever,
Well, a good example, I
right.
mean, of an obvious thing, you know, well, long ago, Herder Brothers, they had a big show at the MFA.
Oh, right, yes.
And, you know, way back in the day, I don't think people thought of that as art per se, but it's beautiful furniture, and it's now considered art.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we insure tons of things that are not art, but they are art. Like if you think of candy, is it Felix Gonzalez Torres, right?
Yeah.
You know, candy piled in the art gallery, you know, people are supposed to take it away and eat it, right? But it's actually insured as an art object. Similarly, like, you know, Flavin sculpture, you know, fluorescent tubes, right? Those are very valuable pieces of art, but are ordinary things, right? So, yes, we cover a lot of incredible stuff.
I feel like I have to address the candy now because I saw some very puzzled looks.
Yes.
So for those who
Oh,
don't
sorry,
know,
yes.
he made, Gonzalez Torres made works of art, which you may have seen. I've eaten the candy myself.
Yes.
It's in a pile, and it would be the weight of his lover who was dying of AIDS, and he was disappearing. So people were encouraged to take the candy, and as his weight dropped, also the weight of the candy
Candy drop, yeah, beautiful work.
Very poetic.
Yeah, very poetic, yeah. Okay, what do you think?
But in
Heidi?
general, I wouldn't insure candy.
Yeah.
Just eat it.
Just eat it.